One day in January of 2026, a software developer based in France went to do something he'd done hundreds of times before. He logged into his Microsoft account to sign a routine driver update. Instead of the dashboard he was used to seeing, he hit a wall. His account, the same one he had relied on for years to safeguard millions of computers worldwide, had been shut down. No email, no heads up, no explanation, just gone. That developer is Munir Adrasi, and the software he maintains is called VeraCrypt, one of the most trusted disk encryption tools in existence. Within weeks, the creator of WireGuard, the VPN protocol quietly powering some of the world's biggest privacy services, found that the exact same thing had happened to him. Two of the most critical pieces of security software on the planet had been silently cut off by the very company controlling the operating system they depend on. If that doesn't unsettle you, it probably should. If you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, because this story only gets stranger from here. Let's start with why any of this matters. Most people have never heard of VeraCrypt or WireGuard, but there's a good chance something you use daily relies on one of them. VeraCrypt is free, open-source disk encryption software. It lets you lock down an entire hard drive, or just a hidden folder, behind a password so tough that even forensic labs struggle to crack it. Journalists rely on it to shield their sources. Lawyers use it to protect client files. Human rights workers depend on it in places where holding the wrong information can put them in danger. Plenty of ordinary people use it too, simply because they don't trust Microsoft's own built-in encryption tool, BitLocker, since Microsoft has handed over BitLocker keys to law enforcement when legally required to do so. VeraCrypt exists specifically for people who want control that doesn't run through Microsoft at all. WireGuard, meanwhile, is the backbone of modern VPN technology. It's the protocol quietly running beneath services like Mullvad, Proton VPN, and Tailscale. It's faster and leaner than older VPN protocols, which is exactly why so much of the privacy industry rebuilt itself around it over the past several years. These aren't side projects thrown together by bored teenagers. These are load-bearing walls of digital privacy. Now here's where things get a little technical, but bear with me because this is the part that explains everything. On Windows, you can't just install any driver you like. Microsoft requires every driver, especially ones operating at the deepest level of the operating system, to carry a digital signature tied to a Microsoft developer account. The idea is to stop malware from disguising itself as legitimate software. On paper, that's a smart safeguard. In practice, it means that for both VeraCrypt and WireGuard, the only path for their software to reach the deepest layers of Windows runs through Microsoft's signing system. No signature, no driver. No driver, no software functioning properly on Windows. That one requirement is the whole story. Whether Microsoft intended it or not, the company holds a kill switch over both of these privacy tools. This isn't even a new policy. Microsoft has been tightening these requirements for years, and for understandable reasons. A signed kernel driver isn't just bureaucratic box checking. It's a core piece of the code integrity model, the system that helps Windows tell trusted low-level software apart from something a hacker is trying to sneak past your defenses. Microsoft's own guidance funnels new drivers through something called the Windows Hardware Compatibility Program, and policy changes rolled out earlier this year made some of the older, looser trust paths even shakier than before. None of that, on its own, is unreasonable. What's unreasonable is what happens when that same tightening process, built to catch bad actors, gets applied with zero human judgment to the very developers the system was meant to protect. So what actually happened? According to Adrasi's own account, posted publicly on SourceForge, Microsoft terminated the developer account tied to his company Idrix sometime in mid-January 2026. The notice he eventually dug up, buried in his account, simply said his organization didn't currently meet verification requirements. No appeal option was listed anywhere. For nearly 3 months, Adrasi tried every channel he could think of to reach an actual human being at Microsoft. All he got back were automated replies. Nothing else. 3 months. Picture maintaining a piece of software trusted by close to 1 million users, then being locked out of your own ability to fix it, with no one on the other end of the line willing to even confirm they'd read your message. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. You're not some random app developer who forgot to renew a license. You're the sole maintainer of a security tool that protects journalists exposing corruption, lawyers handling sensitive client files, and ordinary families who just don't want their data exposed if a laptop gets stolen. Every single day that account stayed frozen, your users were one Windows update away from a problem you had no power to prevent. and the company holding the keys to fix it wouldn't even confirm a human had seen your message. That's not a minor hiccup. That's a maintainer watching a slow-motion crisis unfold in real time, completely powerless to stop it, because the one tool that could stop it had been yanked away without a word of explanation. It's also worth understanding how easily this could happen in the first place. Microsoft's Windows hardware program exists because kernel-level drivers, the kind running beneath the operating system itself, pose a massive security risk if left unchecked. A bad actor who manages to slip a signed kernel driver onto your machine basically gets God mode access to everything you do. So Microsoft built an identity verification layer to ensure only legitimate, accountable developers can sign that kind of software. That part makes sense. The problem is what happens when the verification process itself turns into the vulnerability. An automated sweep can't tell the difference between an abandoned shell company and the literal maintainer of one of the world's most trusted encryption tools. It just sees an account that hasn't checked a box, and it pulls the plug. Jason Donenfeld, the creator of WireGuard, came forward with an almost identical story shortly after Adrassi went public. Donenfeld, who also goes by the handle ZX2C4, said he was in the middle of preparing WireGuard's first major Windows update in nearly 4 years when his account was suddenly suspended. No warning, no notification. He described logging in to publish an update and simply finding his account locked. Like and subscribe if you're starting to notice a pattern here, because it gets worse. Donenfeld said he was placed into a 60-day recovery process, but even that didn't restore his ability to publish updates right away. And he raised a chilling possibility. If WireGuard had been hit by an actively exploited security flaw during that lockout window, he would have had no way to push out an emergency fix to Windows users. Not a slow fix. No fix at all. For anyone running Tailscale on a Windows machine, there's a real chance WireGuard is doing the heavy lifting underneath, encrypting traffic, hiding locations, protecting communications, stripped of decades of legacy bloat carried by older protocols. The entire security community embraced it because it was simpler, faster, and far easier to audit for vulnerabilities. That simplicity is exactly why it spread so quickly across the privacy industry in just a few short years. And for a stretch of time, nobody can put an exact number on, the person responsible for keeping it secure on the world's most popular operating system had essentially no way to do his job. What makes this even stranger is that Microsoft itself ships WireGuard as part of its own infrastructure in certain contexts, while simultaneously locking out the one person who actually maintains the Windows implementation. It's the kind of contradiction that only makes sense once you understand how siloed big companies really are internally. The team handling compliance verification for developer accounts has no visibility into which of those accounts belong to mission-critical infrastructure partners. To that automated system, Jason Donenfeld's account looked exactly the same as some forgotten shareware app from a decade ago. The system doesn't distinguish between unused and irreplaceable. It just sees unverified, and unverified gets suspended. It turned out VeraCrypt and WireGuard weren't even the only ones hit. The VPN provider Windscribe reported the same kind of account suspension, telling reporters they'd spent over a month trying to resolve it without success. Other projects, including LibreOffice and the diagnostic tool MemTest86, were reportedly swept up in the same wave. This wasn't a targeted attack on encryption specifically, at least not as far as anyone can confirm. It looks like something arguably just as alarming, a broad, automated compliance sweep that treated globally critical security infrastructure the exact same way it would treat an abandoned hobby app from 2014. Here's the official explanation once Microsoft finally responded. Pavan Davuluri, Microsoft's Executive Vice President of Windows and Devices, said the suspension stemmed from a policy change first announced back in October 2025, requiring identity verification for all partners in the Windows hardware program who hadn't completed that process since April 2024. Davuluri insisted Microsoft had tried to warn people, pointing to emails, banners, and reminders sent out ahead of time. But he also admitted something pretty telling. In his own words, he said the company knows that sometimes things still get missed. Translation: an automated compliance system flagged the developers behind two of the most widely used encryption and VPN tools on the planet, and nobody at Microsoft noticed until it turned into a PR crisis. Because that's exactly how this got resolved, through public pressure, not internal process. Adrassi's SourceForge post got picked up on Hacker News. Donenfeld posted his own account of events. Then, Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney amplified the story, and that's reportedly what finally got it in front of senior Microsoft leadership. Scott Hanselman, a Microsoft vice president, responded on social media, calling the suspensions an administrative paperwork issue rather than any deliberate move against the software itself. Davalluri later confirmed Microsoft had reached out to both teams, and by April 9th, WireGuard's account was restored. Donenfeld confirmed he'd regained access and could finally resume shipping the long-delayed Windows update. If a multi-billion-dollar company can only catch and fix a critical security failure after a celebrity tech executive tweets about it, that tells you everything you need to know about how fragile this system really is. Sit with that escalation path for a second, because it should bother you more than it probably does. Two security professionals with decades of combined experience, maintaining software trusted by a combined audience in the tens of millions, tried every official channel available to them first. Support tickets, appeal forms, direct messages, none of it went anywhere. What actually worked was turning into a viral story loud enough that a famous video game executive felt compelled to weigh in. That means the real safety net protecting some of the world's most critical security infrastructure isn't a policy, isn't a procedure, and isn't a dedicated support team. It's whether your story happens to catch fire on social media before a deadline runs out. For every VeraCrypt and WireGuard with the name recognition to go viral, there are almost certainly smaller projects facing the exact same fate right now, quietly, with nobody noticing at all. But VeraCrypt's situation didn't get the same happy ending, at least not right away. And this is the part that should genuinely worry anyone running encrypted drives on Windows. Unlike WireGuard's relatively clean-cut suspension, VeraCrypt's problem comes with an expiration date baked directly into the code. The certificate authority used to validate VeraCrypt's existing Windows driver signatures was set to be revoked in late June 2026, with the broader certificate fully retired after July. Once that certificate authority is revoked, any Windows system running with Secure Boot enabled may simply refuse to load VeraCrypt's bootloader. For most software, that just means an update fails. For VeraCrypt, which is often used to encrypt an entire system drive, including the operating system itself, that means a computer that may not boot at all. Think about what that actually looks like for a real person. You encrypted your laptop years ago because it seemed like the responsible thing to do. You haven't thought about VeraCrypt since. Then one day, after a routine Windows update, your machine just refuses to start. Your files are still there, encrypted exactly as you left them, but the bootloader meant to unlock them can no longer be verified by Windows itself. And here's the cruel irony buried in all of this. Fixing that problem means signing a new bootloader under a new certificate authority, and doing that requires the exact same developer account that triggered this entire crisis. It's a closed loop. Adrasi can't fix the long-term problem until Microsoft restores the very account Microsoft suspended in the first place. As of the most recent reporting, that account remained locked, with no confirmed restoration timeline, even as the deadline kept creeping closer. Adrasi has reportedly urged VeraCrypt users to prepare rescue disks and back up their encryption headers now, while their current setup still works, just in case. Kilowatts per rack. The power demands of AI infrastructure have strained electrical grids across multiple countries and have become a serious bottleneck on how fast the industry can scale. Quantum computers run on a fundamentally different energy profile. Microsoft's own researchers have pointed out that the Majorana 1 chip operates in a cold but not energy-hungry way, delivering computational potential that dramatically outpaces anything classical computing can match while burning a fraction of the power. A quantum computer won't shrink AI training's energy footprint anytime soon, because the two do fundamentally different kinds of work. But over time, quantum accelerators may handle specific mathematical problems, like optimization, simulation, and certain kinds of AI inference, far more efficiently than classical hardware. The long-term trajectory points toward greater energy efficiency, even as short-term demand keeps intensifying. Like and subscribe if you want honest, research-based analysis of where the tech industry is actually headed. The security stakes of falling behind on quantum readiness aren't theoretical. UBS, the banking group, published a report warning that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could break the encryption methods underpinning modern digital security, meaning entire security infrastructures could become unreliable overnight. That concern is especially sharp for industries handling sensitive, long-lived data, including finance, healthcare, defense, and government. If an attacker has been quietly collecting encrypted financial transactions, medical records, or classified communications for years, and a quantum computer capable of decrypting all of it shows up in 2029 or 2031, the damage runs backward in time. Data you thought was secure in 2024 or 2025 becomes readable in 2030. That's not a hypothetical risk. It's a well-understood attack strategy that nation-state actors are already pursuing through what's known as harvest now, decrypt later. China alone has poured just under $18 billion into public quantum technology investment, according to the European Center for International Political Economy. The EU has made comparable commitments. The United States government, through agencies including DARPA, the NSA, and NIST, is pushing hard to ensure American companies and infrastructure hit quantum-safe standards on a set timeline. Microsoft's Quantum Safe program is explicitly aligned with these government requirements, including the Committee on National Security Systems Policy Guidance that mandates adoption of the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite 2.0 across all new products and services with cryptographic protection, starting in January 2027. That January 2027 government deadline is one of the reasons Microsoft's late 2026 milestone matters so much strategically. By wrapping up the transition of its core infrastructure services before the end of 2026, Microsoft sets itself up to roll quantum-safe standards into Windows, Azure, Microsoft 365, AI services, data platforms, and networking starting January 2027 as the default, not as a scramble to catch up. The sequencing is deliberate. You can't bolt quantum-safe standards onto your broader product ecosystem until your core infrastructure is already quantum-safe. Otherwise, you'd be building a quantum-resistant house on a cryptographically shaky foundation. Microsoft clearly understood that architectural dependency and structured its whole program around tackling it in the right order. Like and subscribe, because the companies that get sequencing and architecture right in this quantum transition are the ones that will come out the other side with dominant positions. The DARPA angle is also worth flagging, because it shows just how seriously the US government is taking Microsoft's quantum hardware program. DARPA's US2QC program, short for Underexplored Systems for Utility-Scale Quantum Computing, selected Microsoft for evaluation after determining that Microsoft could plausibly build a utility-scale quantum computer within a reasonable timeframe. DARPA then went on to evaluate Microsoft's architectural designs and engineering plans for a fault-tolerant quantum computer. This isn't routine government contract work. DARPA operates at the bleeding edge of technology and only backs programs with genuine potential for transformative impact. The fact that Microsoft cleared DARPA's evaluation and landed a spot in the US2QC program is meaningful outside validation of Microsoft's approach, separate from the ongoing scientific debate over specific measurements from Majorana 1 and Majorana 2. Industry analysts at S&P Global have placed commercial rollout of utility-scale quantum systems somewhere in the 2028 to 2032 window, based on most industry roadmaps. Patrick Moorhead, CEO and chief analyst at Moore Insights and Strategy, has noted that hyperscalers and platform vendors are ramping up investment through cloud access, pricing controls, and developer platforms, while the defense sector is betting early on both quantum computing and quantum networking. The picture that emerges is of an industry that's already past the inflection point. Quantum computing is no longer a side experiment confined to physics labs. It's now part of the infrastructure conversation at the highest levels of enterprise and government planning. Companies and governments that treat quantum readiness as tomorrow's problem are going to wake up to a catastrophic gap between where their security infrastructure sits and where the threat landscape has already moved. Like and subscribe, because understanding this gap is going to matter for every business, every government agency, and every individual who cares about digital privacy over the next decade. Let's pull this all together, because there are a few things critical to understand about what Microsoft is doing here and why it matters far beyond Microsoft itself. First, this Quantum Safe program is the most serious and systematic quantum readiness initiative any major tech company has publicly committed to. The fact that it's phased, tied to government deadlines, and publicly documented means it can serve as a blueprint for other organizations that haven't yet figured out where to begin. Second, the hardware progress on Majorana 1 and Majorana 2 shows that Microsoft's approach to topological qubits is producing measurable results, even as scientific debate over the specifics continues. The pace of development, including using AI to redesign the second-generation chip, has outrun what most observers expected. Third, framing quantum computing as a hybrid layer, not a replacement for classical AI infrastructure, but an accelerator working within it, is the most pragmatic and realistic path toward integration. That framing matches how real data centers are actually built and run, which means the path from research to deployment is far cleaner than it would be if quantum computing demanded an entirely separate infrastructure paradigm. The world's most advanced data centers won't just house classical servers or AI accelerators going forward. They'll house quantum processors, run on quantum-safe cryptographic foundations, and serve as the backbone for a hybrid computing model blending classical AI, high-performance computing, and quantum acceleration. Microsoft is building toward that future faster than almost anyone else, and the late 2026 milestone in its quantum-ready infrastructure transition is one of the most significant and most underreported technology milestones happening right now. The question isn't whether quantum computing is coming. The question is whether you and the organizations you depend on will be ready when it arrives. If you found this video valuable, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, because this channel is where the real technology conversations happen, and we're just getting started.